Hi, this is Carl with another SOP video for managed service providers. Today I want to talk about updating documentation, and in particular why the owner or manager must update all the documentation personally from time to time. The big picture is that the world is dominated by something called atrophy. Things fall apart, right? So what happens is that you might have really great documentation, but if you don't fine-tune it and you don't update it, it will become outdated or inaccurate, or you may find that there's a better way to do something, but it hasn't worked its way into the documentation. Now, if you've got staff who are really, really good at following documentation, that's spectacular. The next step up from that is staff who are really, really good at creating documentation. And I'm a huge fan of letting everybody update documentation all the time. And the reason is very simple. The world changes. In the most fundamental way, things need to be updated because you might be dealing with a piece of software that's updated. The menus change, the options change. Screenshots in your documentation are no longer relevant, or a function simply has been renamed or moved or doesn't exist anymore. So what happens is that really good staff are going to be doing this every day, and so they just sort of change the way that they do it. They might even make it better or more efficient, but that doesn't mean that the better, more efficient way works its way into the documentation. And what happens is that over time, it's nothing that anybody is doing wrong, but over time, things just get to be off and the documentation is not as good as it could be. Somewhat related to that is the fact that a lot of employees are really good at following directions, and that's what you want when it comes to documentation. But if there's a new, better way that's sort of visible but not obvious, then the process does not get updated the way it should. The whole goal of having software updates is that it should make your life easier. It should be faster and easier to get things done, to achieve goals, to document what you're doing. So for example, if you've got sales going on, somebody needs to make sure the invoices get into your Xero or your QuickBooks or whatever you're using for a financial package. And if you've got a tool that fits in the middle, whether that's Gazinta or something else, you got to make sure that you are doing everything the most efficient way. So let's say that you update this piece of software, and then you update that piece of software, and then the bank updates their stuff. All of those things are intended to make your life easier, make your processes better, but A, you have to update the process. And B, you must then update the documentation related to that process. The reason I say a manager or owner should get involved from time to time is that it's more likely that a manager or owner is going to see things from a different perspective than the person who deals with it every single day. I recently had two different things that I needed to update because the person who normally does it took some time off, and so I found myself going through these processes, and because I don't do it every single day, I went and downloaded the documentation, and I'm going through it step by step, and I realized, wait a minute, this whole section over here on one of them needs to get crossed out and marked as old, and then I'm going to update and highlight a few things in the next section because now the way that data moves from point A to point B is slightly different, and let's just go ahead and beef it up in that section. The point is, I was able to see it and make that change because I understood the process, but I also understood the documentation, and I could see immediately that it's probably been done the new way for a long time. It just hasn't worked its way into the documentation, which is fine if I'm the one who has to back somebody up. But if that person leaves the company, now I'm trying to train somebody on an old process. And I know this is annoying, and a lot of people hate documentation, and that's why they don't do it. And they hate updating documentation, and that's why they don't do it. But at the end of the day, you will save more time in the long run by documenting your processes and keeping them updated on a regular basis. So I recommend that just every once in a while you pick some documentation and say, all right, today I'm going to do that. What's funny is, unrelated to this, I have another employee who said, hey, if you want me to go and learn the new process, I'll just process that piece of the information tomorrow or for the next couple of days, and that way I'll sort of get a feel for what it looks like. And so that to me is exactly what you want. You want to cross-train people so that if one person leaves, you haven't lost the ability or the knowledge to get something done, but you also have people who kind of have some sense of what it looks like, and as a result, they will be able to come up to speed much more quickly when things do change. In general, this gets back to one of the earliest things I've ever said on documentation. You want a culture of documentation. You want a culture in which people actually follow the processes, do it right, go slow, make sure that it's accurate, and they follow your process, which builds your brand. And finally, that brings us to the main reason that the owner or manager needs to be involved from time to time is this is a branding issue. Remember, your branding doesn't end with your logo and the color of your font. The branding involves every single thing you do. The way that you do everything in your business is your brand. And even if a client doesn't see it, part of your brand is that your staff works well together, does things a certain way, and that reflects, whether it's regard to speed or accuracy, the way that your business does business. Please give me your comments. I'll be very happy to respond to any comments you have down below, and let me know what your experience is with regard to updating your documentation. For Small Biz Thoughts, this is Carl Polachuk, wishing you the best of luck in everything you do.